Tensions are rising as we move into the planning phase for a carbon price. Business groups seem divided over where to set the price, and now the chairman of Industry Funds Management has delivered an impassioned spray against the superannuation industry for their lack of support for the clean energy industry. It seems for clean energy, from little things, big things grow not very fast. Well, IFM chairman Garry Weaven joins me now from Melbourne. Garry, welcome to the programme.
Hi, Tikki.
Well, you picked a very heated moment to expose the super funds. Was that deliberate?
Well, I think it's opportune time for people to get focused on the issue. The scientific facts are very well known. The super funds are proud of their tradition of looking at the facts and investing accordingly. And now it's time we have a very close look at what the scientific facts are and adjust portfolios accordingly.
What do you think is driving their aversion to invest in clean energy? Is it this belief that there just isn't the political will worldwide to move on climate change?
Yeah, I think there's two things. I think one is it's hard. You know, while the headlines have been spectacular about my criticism, I recognise it's very hard for any group, any section of an industry to move too far ahead of their competitors. There is a bit of herding together for safety. People don't want to be exposed by being too different in case it goes wrong. That's one reason. I think the other reason is, as you say, there is a very real and justified fear that the quite narrow but very entrenched and quite powerful vested interests throughout the world, and including in Australia, will actually be successful in putting off the day that we face up to the science and the reality of climate change and start adjusting our investment behaviour accordingly.
You say it's hard. I mean, it is particularly hard for the way that we've set up superannuation funds in terms of their quarterly requirements of reporting, their pressure from investors to create their own returns, and indeed the alternatives that they have got, ironically, in the mining industry boom, you know, the opposite end of the spectrum, where they're going to get those big returns.
Oh, yes. Look, I think you need to have both a short-term and a long-term view in superannuation. My argument is you can't be only short-term in your outlook. And I think, you know, many of the commodity stories are pretty healthy and strong in the short term. In the longer term, some of the commodities, particularly those based around fossil fuels, and particularly those where the values are attached to fossil fuels that are still in the ground and not due to be dug up and used for 5, 10 years or even longer, I think there are very real serious doubts about some of that ever being capable of being used, because at some point in time, governments will actually take action to look after future generations. They will act. They might not reach a global agreement. That's not important. What is important is that governments will act, as many governments right now are acting around the world. You know, we really are laggards in this, and we're being sold a bit of a false story about that.
Industry funds management, of course, is a very different beast from the super funds. You've got 5-year investment terms, and one of your key philosophies, I know, is a focus on environmental issues. Shouldn't you, in a way, be the leader in this area?
Well, we do have to lead, and we're happy and proud to lead. And, you know, we're owned by a whole bunch of industry super funds who are our clients and also own us. And, you know, they have done something. I mean, I don't think they've done a root and branch approach to their portfolios, but they certainly have taken a leadership position. You know, we have done a number of things over the last 5 or 7 or even longer years, and including taking 100% position in renewable energy company Pacific Hydro. We've got a significant commitment to wind and small hydro in Australia, to run-of-river hydro in Chile, to wind in Brazil. Very solid investment, performing very well, and very prospective for the future. And a number of other things we've done, and our client super funds, industry funds, have followed that lead.
Now you say you're putting your, I mean, indeed you're putting your money where your mouth is, really. But let me just take those two areas of hydro and wind. I mean, your big returns presumably are still coming from hydro in those investments.
Well, it's all a geographic issue. You know, it depends on the local economy and the politics. Much of the world is moving ahead at a rapid rate on renewable energy. So it's true that, for example, in Chile, our returns are entirely based around run-of-river hydro. In Australia, we've had good results from wind, but the best is yet to come because there's been a very stop-start policy environment in Australia. There's been considerable political risk. First of all, we had, the Howard government reversing its policy. It introduced renewable energy target and then went cold on it. And then we had a period where there's been a lot of mistakes made in terms of the policy direction. Now, however, we've got a bipartisan policy. People overlook this. While there's a lot of argument about the carbon price, there is actually a bipartisan policy on renewable energy targets in this country, and that will produce a lot of investment in wind and then later solar in this country.
A lot of people are saying that bipartisan target is almost more important than the price, but we've got calls now from business for a start at $10 a tonne. If that does happen, is that likely to make any difference to our emissions, do you think?
I think it, on its own, not, but it would be the signal that there is a stable policy environment into the future. I'm not advocating such a low price because, the price needed is probably higher than that. But I do think that making a start is important, and I do think that we need to clear away the incredibly ignorant political debate that's currently emanating from Canberra, and actually get focused on getting some sort of a bipartisan policy around carbon, as we eventually did around renewable energy targets.
Garry Weaven, I thank you very much for joining us tonight.
It's my pleasure.